What is going on, y'all? Welcome to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where masculinity is still in full effect and faith has not been neutered. Today is Tuesday, January 27th in the year of our Lord 2026. And we're not just talking about politics here. We're engaged in spiritual warfare, and suicidal empathy is dressed up as progress. So we're fighting against all of that. We're done pretending, we're done pulling punches, and we're not gonna apologize. So if you are looking for a safe space, weighted blankets, some puppy therapy, you are in the wrong place, but stick it out because you might just learn something. They keep telling us that this chaos that we're seeing is spontaneous. It just happens. And they're protecting their neighbors. And these cities, though, they don't burn. They don't descend into this chaos by accident. They're following instructions. When the same tactics keep turning up in the same places at the same time, it's not protest. Not even close. It is a blueprint that is being followed. And if you want to know who's calling the shots, check the group chat. Let's get after it. So we all know that we all know what happened in Minnesota over the weekend. Alex Preddy, 37-year-old nurse, U.S. citizen, was killed by some Border Patrol agents. And he was, according to all reports, a lawful gun owner who was legally permitted to carry a weapon. He had no serious criminal history. And all this has been confirmed by the police chief and reporting and stuff like that. But that's not where the story ends. That's what they would like you to believe, but that's not where it ends. They claim that, or they said that he approached officers with a handgun, and the emphasis that they're putting on his possession of a firearm and loaded magazines, and his lack of an actual physical permit on him, is that emphasis is incorrectly placed. There, Kristi Noem and whatnot, they frame this as his malicious intent based solely on the fact that he was carrying a weapon. Let's listen to what Kash Patel had to say, and then we'll dig a little deeper into it, because this was I was really kind of shocked to actually see this and hear this. But take a listen to this.
People are marching through Minneapolis. They are targeting the Border Patrol. I mean, it feels like the rhetoric and the protesting is only ramping up. What is your advice to the people right now who are outraged that this is a second killing at the hands of Border Patrol in 2 weeks?
As Kristi said, you cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that.
Okay. That's just flat out incorrect. And I was shocked to hear that come out of this guy's mouth.
That's simple. You don't have that right to break the law and incite violence. We will, of course, always protect your First Amendment speech. And if you peacefully protest, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you have seen a trend here, not just in Minnesota, but across the country, in these protests turning into violent scenarios and people attacking law enforcement. That's when you go over the line, and that's when law enforcement steps in.
Well, you know,
This is supposed to be and has been billed as the most pro-2A administration, DOJ, in the country's history. But what he just said feeds right into the left's narrative that guns are inherently bad. And now we have leftists who sound like they're pro-2A people, which is completely flipping the script. And these are the same people that wanted to put Kyle Rittenhouse and the McCluskeys in St. Louis under the jails, even though equating either of those cases to this is just, it is ridiculous because they're two completely different things. And they're also telling us that Ashley Babbitt, who was a violent insurrectionist, who was attacking a police officer, and she deserved to die. Same people, same people. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. And I'm not gonna get into Kristi Noem's comments. She was, as much as I think she is, she has been doing a good job. She messed up in that press conference, and I might be able to get to it a little later. But there's a lot in this case to get to. Every time I thought I had everything set, something else broke, something else was revealed, and so I'm going to try and get through it as best I can. I may miss some points because, like I said, this phrase is kind of overused, but it's been like drinking from a fire hose because it's been just that crazy. But I have watched so many different angles and played at so many different speeds of this incident, all the footage that, or most of the footage that I've been able to find out there. I've watched it multiple times. And I actually understand some of the people. I don't believe this, but I can actually understand a good faith argument that ICE was wrong. I don't believe that for a second. But based on the evidence, based on the videos that are out there, people who don't know anything about use of force, people who don't know anything about police tactics, I can see how they might see this. And I do my best to try to educate them and say, well, you're wrong. But I get it from on an intellectual level. And there's a theory that I heard early on that I've since seen some actual footage that I'm not going to say conclusively now that I believe that particular theory, but there's some footage out there that actually, and we're going to get into it, that kind of supports it. But before we get into that, I just want to wrap this piece up. Preddy was legally carrying a firearm. He had every right to do it. What he didn't have a right to do was inject himself into law enforcement operations. This is a tragic story. It didn't have to happen. He should still be alive. He absolutely should still be alive. There's going to be an investigation. The fact that people like Walls and Fry and the rest of these morons already proclaiming guilt, already talking about calling it murder, doesn't help. Doesn't help. But as I said, he was legally carrying a firearm and had every right to do it. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Those 27 words. Protect the people's right to keep and bear arms. They enshrine it. They guarantee it, regardless of their politics. And now, as pro-2A as I am, I would rather not see leftists carrying guns. But they have every right to do it, and I would never try to do anything to infringe upon that right. If I know that there are leftists carrying a gun, I'm going to be on a heightened state of awareness around them, but they have a right to do it. Now, that said, if you engage in conduct that is unlawful, if you engage in conduct that is threatening somebody, if you engage in obstructing law enforcement operations, then all bets are off. Then all bets are off. Kash Patel and others in the DOJ have made some ridiculous Second Amendment statements, anti-Second Amendment statements in the wake of this incident. That doesn't mean that I am now anti-ICE, anti-law and order, nothing like that. Because contrary to what we see in our political discourse these days, nuance does exist. Multiple things can be true. You can be a staunch believer in the Second Amendment, a staunch advocate for the Second Amendment, and still believe that interfering in law enforcement operations is a stupid thing to do. Extremely stupid thing to do, whether you're armed or not. You can also believe, while holding those beliefs, you can also believe that enforcing immigration law is good and fundamental to maintaining our republic. And you can also believe, while holding those three views, you can also believe that Minnesota officials created this situation. They created the situation by encouraging violent confrontations while at the same time impeding federal enforcement of said laws. Those things are not inconsistent with each other. All of those things can be true. And let's just take a second to acknowledge how we got here. None of this would be happening if Pretty and Good would still be alive if Minnesota officials had allowed federal law enforcement, ICE, CBP, to go into the jails and pick up the violent offenders on these detainers. There is let's see. There is a study that was done that shows just how ridiculous it is that these people are subjected in Minnesota to this violence when it doesn't have to be this way. Let's take a look at this real quick. "63% of all violent confrontations," and it's kind of hard for you to see, so you know what, let me just read it. 63% of all violent confrontations with ICE happen in 9 counties in the United States. The remaining 3,134 account for the rest. According to this study, actually, let me see if I have the link. I don't, but the other 3,134 counties, you are 590 times more likely to deal with a violent confrontation in those 9 counties than you are the remaining counties. And what do you think those 9 counties all have in common? They're all in blue cities run by Democrat mayors who have refused to allow ICE into their jails. That's it. That's it. I think I mentioned this last week. Texas has 10 times as many arrests as they do in Minnesota. But you don't hear about any of that violence because ICE is picking these people up in the jails and the prisons. It's really that simple. And that's how we got here. And if the officials in Minnesota will just comply and cooperate, Alex Preddy and Rebecca Good would still be alive. This case, and it didn't have to be this way, but this case right now hinges on, well, they've tried to frame it as his mere possession of a firearm. And it raises questions about how narratives are formed and whether lawful gun ownership, lawful possession, can be framed as intent, like Patel and Noam said, or implied anyway, at the very least. It highlights the gap between official rhetoric and verified facts. Speaking of rhetoric, this really blew my mind. Police chief Brian O'Hara said something so ridiculously stupid that I couldn't just Wow. Okay, let's take a look at this.
You know of that Preddy was assaulting the federal officers as the Border Patrol chief claims?
Well, I've seen the videos just as thousands of people around the country have, and the videos speak for themselves. I think it's deeply concerning, the things that are being said. This is an individual that was a city resident. It appears that he was present, exercising his First Amendment rights to record law enforcement activity, and also exercising his Second Amendment rights to lawfully be armed in a public space in the city. So I think very obviously there are serious questions that are being raised. And I think the greater issue is, even if there is an investigation that ultimately proves that at the time of the shooting it was legally justified, I don't think that even matters at this point, because there is so much outrage and concern around what is happening in the city.
Even if it turns out after investigation that it was a justified shoot, it doesn't matter? Really? How does that make any sense? Of course it matters. And the fact that he said that, this guy should not be the chief of mall security, let alone a major metropolitan police department. And it's not just him. We got Tim Walz publicly condemning the agents before any investigation barely even gets underway, let alone is finished. Inflames public outrage with his ridiculous nonsense. Frames all of the Border Patrol and ICE as villains, and uses the jurisdictional conflict as a cudgel, as a weapon. It's really, it's remarkable to watch. It's remarkable to watch. He called Good and Preddy, those shootings, called them executions. But he's a police chief. He should understand use of force laws and regulations. He should get it. Self-defense, use of force those standards don't bend to the whims of an angry mob or political pressure. It doesn't work that way. And they're all about talking about due process, but declaring guilt before an investigation barely gets underway completely poisons the idea of due process. This fits a pattern, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. But law enforcement is vilified. Criminal behavior is not just rationalized, but excused, which erodes authority from the top all the way down. And from this guy's words, his officers are gonna take the lesson that you can enforce the law as long as you don't upset anyone. And the result of that is hesitation, withdrawal altogether, and you embolden the criminals and just invite more chaos. And so if the legality of it doesn't matter, enforcement becomes absolutely impossible. It doesn't matter, right? If outrage dictates justice, then mob rule replaces order. And of course, we know from paying attention, that's what the left really wants. They want chaos. They thrive on this chaos. Today, it's ICE and Border Patrol. Previously, it's been municipal police departments. It's just going to keep perpetuating itself. A system built on feelings and public sentiment eventually collapses on itself because there's nothing there to hold it up. There's no foundation. Whatever way the wind blows, that's how people are going to feel. Whatever way the American Pravda tells them to feel, that's how they're going to feel. At this point, the question isn't whether chaos spreads. It's just a matter of how fast. All right. Before we take a break, I just want to thank everyone for being in the chat. Thank you all for being here, whether you agree or not. We appreciate you participating. We love to have polite disagreements. And so please remember to be respectful and no caps, and just engage in a discussion. Give us your reasoning for your point of view, and we'll see if we can address that. But we're not going to respond to ad hominem attacks and all that. We're just not going to do it. We're not going to tolerate it. But thank you all for being here, and we really appreciate the participation. All right. Let's get a word in from a sponsor before we move on, because there's a lot to get to, and if I go get on to the next topic, who knows if we'll even get a break. I'll just end up yammering the whole time. But our sponsor for today's show is Patriot Mobile. And now more than ever, voting, your vote just is not enough. You need to make sure that your resources, your dollars go to companies that fight for what you believe in. That's why we switched to Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. They don't just talk about values, they actually back them up with action. A portion of every dollar that you spend with them goes to pro-life, pro-family, and pro-liberty organizations. So right now, you can get a free month of service when you go to Patriot Mobile and use the promo code Jackson, or call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code Jackson. Defend freedom with every call, every text, every month. PatriotMobile.com/Jackson. Switch to PatriotMobile.com today. All right, y'all. You're watching or listening to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where you can also catch our great lineup, Sackhead Sean with the Edge of Liberty, every Monday and Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. He had a great show last night, so go ahead and check out the replay. He had a great interview with a candidate for governor in the state of California. So please go ahead and check that out. Also, Jersey Joe, the Reaver of Common Sense, every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And BZ with the Berserk Bobcat Saloon every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Please be sure to like and subscribe and share all of these great shows, and pray that we continue the breakthrough that we're experiencing. Last I looked, we were at 886 subscribers. So we have been growing. So we thank you all very much for that. Appreciate it. We hope you continue to spread the word, share the shows, tell all your friends to like and subscribe so that we can continue the growth. We were hoping to reach 1,000 by, I don't know, Q1, but if you guys keep liking and sharing and spreading the word, we could reach 1,000 in the next week or so. So please keep that up, and we look forward to reaching each and every one of you. All right, now back to the briefing. Now, there have been reports surfacing that there is a private signal chat that Cam Higbee, independent journalist, infiltrated, and that is outstanding, because we've known all along that all of these things, all of these protests, going all the way back to the Summer of Love, have been coordinated efforts. It's obvious. And this signal chat was a very sophisticated and coordinated attempt to disrupt ICE operations. And the fact that this seems to have caught people by surprise is kind of amazing to me. This chat was giving people, giving their operatives real-time alerts, crowd movement coordination, sharing the locations of federal agents. There were lawyers, activist organizers, individuals tied to Democrat political networks. This has the fact that it hasn't really blown up. Well, I shouldn't say it's surprising. It's really not, because the American Pravda doesn't want to publicize this information. They really don't. It's up to independent journalists. It's up to social media. It's up to us, really, to spread this word. The fact is, there probably won't be a whole lot of consequences for this, unfortunately. But the critical issue is that it is a structured, coordinated effort. It's not a spontaneous protest. It is coordinated chaos, networked mobilization. Just like with Antifa, they kept saying Antifa is just an idea, that there's no organization to it. Nobody is giving orders, but yet somehow everybody knows exactly where to be and when to be there. But there's no organization to it. This is the part that people who don't want to see it pretend to not see. There was an analysis done by a former Special Forces operator. And he said that these patterns, what he's seeing with this, is familiar. It is early stage insurgency. It looks like protests, sounds like activism, hides behind moral language, but it is the beginning stages of insurgency. I know this might be a little hard to see, but I'm gonna bear with me. Because this is, as I said, a Special Forces veteran. Actually, you know what? I think maybe there's a tweet. Let's just, yeah, let's do this instead. This is Eric Schwam, who was a former Special Forces warrant operator, and it's still really tough to see, I guess. But I'm just going to read to you a little bit of this, because he says what's unfolding in Minneapolis right now isn't a protest. It is low-level insurgency infrastructure built by people who have studied the playbook. And he talks about the signal chat, the dedicated roles of certain groups. It's not spontaneous outrage, according to Eric Schwam. It is command and control with redundancy, operational security hygiene, and task organization that would make a Special Forces team sergeant proud of his team. Replace ICE agents, he says, replace ICE agents with occupying coalition forces, and the structure maps almost one-to-one to early stage urban cells we hunted in the mid-2000s. It's, as I said, and it's been obvious from the beginning. It's been obvious from the beginning that there was a coordinated effort, and a Special Forces operator would know, would be able to recognize this for what it is. And because he probably participated in this, he fought against it, and he was probably involved in similar operations in other countries. This is not going to end well. This is not going to end well if we don't nip it in the, well, we should have nipped it in the bud in 2020 during the Summer of Love. But this is something that we're going to have to get a handle on, and get a handle on it quick. Because the key markers of this low-level insurgency, as he put it, are visible. Narrative warfare, delegitimization of authorities, spotters, and we're going to get into that here in a second as well. Hesitating to enforce laws. It's not about overthrowing the United States government altogether, but it's about making enforcement almost impossible. And this insurgency, it's not going to start or even end with bombs, but it has started with excuses, and the excuses coming out of Minnesota right now are obvious. Like I said, just with Antifa, no obvious leaders on paper, no official announcement, no website, just mutual aid, community alerts, support networks, the whole shebang. It's modern destabilization working. It's not innocence. It's not coincidence. It's design. And I talked about spotters. And James O'Keefe, from formerly Project Veritas, now O'Keefe Media Group, he went to Minneapolis to document the activist activity, the insurgency. And almost as soon as he touched down, as soon as he got there, he was met with a hostile response, aggressively confronted. This is just these. I don't even understand. This is a chat, a text that he got as soon as he got there. We know you're in Minneapolis. You're with O'Keefe and his crew of Nazis. You're in a white Ford with the license plate from Florida. You have 1 hour to leave or you're dead. What do they think they're going to accomplish with that? It blows my mind that these people think that that's going to win people over to their side. Because it's not random, spontaneous anger. It's boundary enforcement. It's like basically creating a CHOP or a CHAZ like they did in Seattle, just without the physical barriers. With this insurgency, the journalists like James O'Keefe, Cam Higbee, Nick Shirley, they become pressure points. And their dissenting coverage must be discouraged. They can't have that. They can't have an opposing narrative gain any traction. And with O'Keefe and even with Shirley exposing the Somali fraud and all the rest of it, did anyone, I don't recall hearing anyone in power in Minnesota, not Walz, Ellison, Omar, none of them. Didn't hear any of them condemn any of the threats against them. I haven't heard anyone condemn the threat against O'Keefe. No, I haven't heard anyone in the media on the opposite side, on CNN, on BS Now. Haven't heard any of them condemn it. If anything, they're blaming those journalists themselves for exposing it. They love to talk about the First Amendment. Donna Lemonade loved to talk about the First Amendment, the right to protest, the freedom of the press. But they only love it as long as the press is telling the right story. As soon as someone in the press says something different, well, then the gloves come off. These signal chats and these coordinated efforts, all they do is lower the friction and increase the consequences. It's kind of a feedback loop, so to speak. Online coordination and offline intimidation. And to a certain extent, it's working. To a certain extent, it's working. Because when the mob learns that the state is not going to inflict any consequences, is not going to engage in any enforcement action, the escalation is inevitable. And it's no longer about left versus right. Hasn't been about left versus right for a long time. It's about good versus evil. It's about who is allowed to operate without consequences and who's not. If there's no price paid for intimidation, if there's no price paid for any of this, then the only thing that's going to happen is it's going to escalate. The danger isn't the ideology. Well, to a certain extent, to a limited extent, it is. But the real danger is the precedent that this is setting. Because it will be reused, it will spread, it will escalate. And at that point, all bets are off, as I've said before. Disorder doesn't need to win outright. All it needs is to have the state stop enforcing. And if you can hear that, that means something is being delivered, or maybe it's the guys who are coming to dig us out from this storm. Who knows? So yeah, they don't need to overthrow the system. They just need to make it so that it can't function effectively. That's it. And that's what they're doing. Now, I kind of got on a tangent and skipped over something that I really wanted to talk about. I wanted to get into. So let's go ahead and do that now. We're gonna skip back to the actual shooting that kicked off all this. And I mentioned earlier that there was a theory that circulated early on that I wasn't quite sure of, but at this point, I think it might actually be there. I'm not saying for absolutely certain that I believe this 100%, but I am definitely willing to have the conversation. And let's just, is it this one? All right. Let's take a look at this, and then we'll get into it. I'm going to mute it because the whistle is annoying. Pay attention to this guy. All right, this is the scrum. Now that guy is going in. and he has the gun. Now, pay attention. Did you see it? I'm not saying that it's 100% accurate. I'm not saying that I believe it, but like I said, I'm willing to have the conversation. And the theory was that this guy was carrying a P320, a Sig Sauer P320. And if you have any, if you pay attention to the gun world at all, you know that the P320 is notorious for spontaneous discharges. At first, it was just when it was dropped, but I've seen footage that, in fact, 2 or 3 months ago, or maybe a little bit before Christmas, there were some security guards at the USAA headquarters in San Antonio, and they were issued SIG P320s, and there's video footage of one of them holstering his weapon, and it's clear from the footage that he did not have his finger on the trigger, and it went off in his holster. And it didn't injure him, but the ricochet injured one of his partners. And there's been multiple stories like that. There's been at least one fatality, if not two, of the P320 firing without a trigger being pulled. And so in that particular video, I saw what looked like it could have been a muzzle flash as the guy was running away, as the guy who disarmed Preddy was clearing the scene. There's another one that's in slow motion that I want to check out. And that's this one right here. So let's take a look at this one. And they highlight it, and we'll be able to see, and you can make your own determination. Like I said, I wasn't there. I don't have any. The only thing I can say definitively is that this didn't have to happen. Well, there's a few other things I can say definitively, but I don't know if this negligent discharge, a spontaneous discharge from a SIG P320 is what started the shooting. But let's take a look at this. Now, as you may be able to see, it looks like, see, he has it marked, the slide is back. And it does look like that to me. And you can see that his finger is not on the trigger. The investigation will bear that out. But if that's what happened, that sheds a whole new different light on things, because we have the benefit of looking at it in slow motion. Between the time he cleared the scene with that weapon and the time the shots, the subsequent shots rang out, was less than a second. And when you're law enforcement and you're in that scrum, when you're in that situation, that thing is unfolding so fast. You have that much time to make a decision. And when somebody yells gun and you immediately hear a shot, that's what's going to happen. And as I said, I don't know that that's what happened. But if it is, that's an unfortunate consequence of injecting yourself into a law enforcement operation with a gun. He had every right to be there. He had every right to film. He had every right to have his firearm on him. The moment he injected himself into the situation, it was bound to spiral out of control. As unfortunate as it is, and I'm not celebrating his death. I'm not saying he deserved it in any way, but it was a series of poor decisions that led to his demise. And I don't want to hear the short skirt rape victim analogy, because it's not that by any stretch, not even close. Because he brought it on himself, unfortunately. He brought it on himself. I know many people who have been to rallies, who have been to protests. You see them, you see the images of them all over the place. People with firearms at these rallies, shaking the hands of police officers, thanking them for what they do, while armed, sometimes even open carrying. And they manage not to get shot. Well, how? Because they're not involved they don't inject themselves into their operations. And I mentioned the Kyle Rittenhouse analogy, and people are bringing that up, saying, "Oh, you think he's a hero, but this guy." Kyle Rittenhouse was defending himself. Kyle Rittenhouse was, after the incident, he walked towards the police with his hands up. Completely different scenario. Kyle Rittenhouse was being attacked. This guy was sticking his nose where it didn't belong. So, as sad as it is that he is no longer with us, there's a lesson to be learned. There's a lesson to be learned. And the lesson is, don't inject yourself into law enforcement operations, whether you're armed or not. Whether you're armed or not. Because it is only going to end badly for you. All right, I wanted to get that out there. You know what, we got about a half an hour left. And I want to get into this because as I was preparing, doing last minute prep for the show, I came across another story related to this. Because I thought maybe I would skip this one, but now I really don't have a choice. One of the things that we talk about often on this show is the Islamification of this country. And it is happening at an accelerated rate. And it's another one of those things that the American Pravda doesn't want to talk about because it's Islamophobic or racist or any of the ists or any of the phobes. And it's happening with, like I said, it's happening at an accelerated rate, even in the state of Texas. And the Austin City Council has voted to commemorate Care Austin Day as part of Muslim Heritage Month. And it's not CARE, C-A-R-E, it's CAIR, C-A-I-R, Council of American and Islamic Relations. You know, the group that Greg Abbott designated as a terrorist and criminal organization? In Austin, the Austin City Council defied that order and is recognizing CARE. Somehow all of this stuff keeps flying under the radar. No, it never gets any coverage. No scrutiny from any of the American Pravda whatsoever. And of course, that's because they're sympathetic. They're just as far left as the Islamic world is. Well, I know they have some conservative-ish, well, we'll say religious values, not conservative, religious values that in some respects align with a conservative point of view. But they just don't want to recognize the danger that Islam poses. And the fact that they just completely disregarded an executive order from the governor is just baffling to me. There was no debate. There were no hearings. There was no process with this. It was just done. But if a veteran group or a law enforcement organization or a pro-life or Christian-based organization wanted to do something like this, it would be scrutinized, it would be vetted, and more than likely denied, especially if it's, well, any veterans, they couldn't care less about veterans. Law enforcement, we've already established they hate law enforcement. And pro-life or faith-based Christian organizations, come on. But when you frame it as heritage and rush it through, then once you get it done, you can label everyone who opposes it as a bigot after the fact. And the municipal government in Austin is, they're cheering on their own demise. They're cheering on, it's suicidal empathy. It's suicidal empathy. Austin is one of the most liberal left-wing cities in the country. I can only think of a few that are more liberal than Austin. And at this point, that may not even be the case anymore. Do they really think that someone in the city council who happens to be a homosexual, do they really think that if CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood get the power in the city that they won't throw them off the roof of the state capitol? Because they will. They're just going along to get along right now. They're going along to gain a foothold, to gain some status. This is their playbook through and through. This is how they do it. And the suicidal empathy of these leftists, it's like they've never read the Quran. It's like they've never seen a report of how they treat homosexuals. And these gays for Palestine and all this nonsense, come on. It's so stupid. So stupid. CARE, the Council for American Islamic Relations, is a terrorist organization with ties to the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas and a host of other terror organizations. They have a history of lobbying, litigation activism, and media pressure campaigns. And so this isn't about Muslims being our neighbors. It's about a government endorsing an ideology that is diametrically opposed to its own interests. If cities want to protect pluralism, I disagree, but okay. But to endorse official representatives, to endorse official narratives that go completely against everything that you stand for is crazy. It's crazy to me. Islam is our enemy. We may not be at war with them, but they are absolutely at war with us. Islam is our enemy. And as Christians, we are supposed to love our enemies. We're supposed to pray for them. And I do. But that doesn't mean we have to be stupid. Allowing Islam this much influence in our society is stupid. And as I was going through this to get some last minute prep for the segment, I came across this. And this really hit home for me because I used to live where this is taking place. This is a Rare Foundation website. Texas Red Alert. North Austin Islamic School secures 19 acres, raises millions, and plans a mosque-centered campus with NAIT and WQF transfer for long-term institutional control. This is a Muslim and Islamic complex that is being proposed in the city of Leander, Texas. I used to live in Leander, Texas. When we first moved there in 2007, it was a rural area, very country. They had a supermarket and a couple of bars, and that was pretty much it. It grew exponentially in the years that we were there, which is why we moved. And now there's an Islamic complex about to go in. And it's sad to see, actually. It really is. And let me see if I can find the Yeah, the NAIT is a North American Islamic Trust. And what they're doing when they purchase this land under this trust, it is in the paperwork that what is going to happen is once everything is purchased and finalized, it is going to transfer to the WAQF, which is an Islamic religious, I don't want to say trust, but it's an organization that basically would make it impossible for anyone to get rid of it once that happens. It becomes a permanent religious fixture in the community. This is sad. This is sad because we moved out of Leander, but I still have some affinity for the city, and it was great when we lived there. And it is just indicative of the expansion of the Islamic ideology that is being allowed to happen, embraced even. And it's being embraced, I think, largely because of the money. I think it's the money. There's no other explanation. There is no other explanation other than that. These Islamic organizations are well-heeled and spread money around, and they know that Americans love money. And especially politicians who have the ability to push these things through will sell their souls for a few bucks. And I think that's what's happened here. And so CARE and these Islamic schools and all the rest of it, it's happening on the UT campus too, by the way. There's an Islamic center that has been built on the UT campus. If CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood get a city recognized day and a school campus in an Austin suburb, that just shows that there is no limiting principle. No limiting principle. And once government starts commemorating these holidays and these advocacy groups, there's no more neutrality. This is the United States. This is America. And why anyone with a couple of firing neurons doesn't understand how much Islam hates us is beyond me. I know a lot of these people have been paid off. I get it. But there has to be somebody in the midst of all this to say, hold up, let's pump the brakes on this. But no. So if you disagree with what they're doing, you've chosen a side, and they have as well. And you're on opposite sides. And that just fuels the division that they claim to want to avoid. They're normalizing an ideology that absolutely hates us and has said in no uncertain terms numerous times You can go on X, on any social media, and see it all for yourself all day long. They hate us. They're going to make sure that Islam is in every household. They have said numerous times that homosexuality is punishable by death. They're allowed to beat their wives. They're allowed to, the things that they're allowed to do, it's just horrific. And that's what they want in this country. And so many politicians are just swinging the doors wide open. And we gotta stop it. We have to stop it. The government, these local governments exist to maintain order, to protect equal treatment, and serve all residents, not just one group or the other, but all of them. Not the chosen constituencies that can pad their bank accounts. But that's what they're doing. They're elevating political constituencies above others simply because they got money. And Austin and Leander, which is just north of Austin, they're not recognizing a culture at this point. They are validating a political power broker who at the end of the day is going to try and destroy us. And they couldn't care less. They couldn't care less. And that is sad to see. All right, there was another story I wanted to get to along those same lines, and we hung out in Minnesota a little bit too long because there's a couple of things I wanted to get to that at this point, with 10 minutes left, I don't really have that kind of time. But there were a couple of things that I do want to just leave you with. As I said, I used to do this segment called Adventures of the Galactically Stupid. And it's funny because I actually saw somebody on one of the sites I look at. It may have been Town Hall, where they actually use that phrase, galactically stupid. And I didn't come up with that phrase. It's, if you watch, it's a line from a movie. And if you know what that movie is, then good on you. But let's take a look at this, because this doesn't really fall into the galactically stupid. Well, it kind of does. So yeah, these people are insane. These people are absolutely off their rocker. And Libs of TikTok does some great work, and they don't do anything other than repost the stupidity of these leftists. And then they get mad at Libs of TikTok for spreading the word that they had wanted to get out there. They put it online, so they obviously want people to see it. But then when Libs of TikTok actually does it, then they get mad. This woman basically threatened the lives of any ICE agents that she comes across. So just, these people are insane.
I thought of something good. I think it's something weird spot. Sabotage tactic, or at least scare tactic. All the medical providers, grab some syringes with needles on the end. Have them full of saline or succinylcholine, you know, whatever. That will probably be a deterrent. Be safe. Okay, for today's resistance tip, I vote, anybody got any poison ivy, poison oak in their yard? Get some of that up with gloves, obviously. Get it in some water, like a gallon of water. Get the poison ivy oak water, and I'm gonna put it into a water gun. Aim for faces, hands. All right, the single ladies where these ICE guys are going have a chance to do something, you know, not without risk, but could help the cause for sure. Get on Tinder, get on Hinge, find these guys. They're around. They're an ICE agent, bring some X-Lax and put it in their drinks. Get them sick. You know, nobody's gonna die. Just enough to incapacitate them, get them off the street for the next day. Highly, easily deniable. You know, you could get sick too.
These
Won't eat
people
there
are
again.
insane.
I'm just saying,
I'm just saying.
let's get them.
She's not the only one. I mean, there are a number of these lunatics out there that are doing this stuff. I think this woman actually lost her job after posting this. I think. I'm not sure. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. She should. She should. But it just goes to show you that these people are unhinged. Unhinged. And it's it's staggering to think that these people are in positions like this nurse who we just heard talk about inflicting injury on ICE agents that she comes across and encouraging her cohorts to do the same thing. It's really beyond me. I don't understand what goes on in these people's minds to think that this is okay. I think that these people are absolute lunatics, but I would never advocate for someone to go out of their way to intentionally inflict harm on them. If you come at me, if you come after someone that I love and that I want to protect, well, that's a different story. But to just randomly systematically seek out someone to inflict harm on them, that's demonic. That's sick. What else do you say to that? What else is there to say to that other than you're a lunatic and seek help? They all need to seek help. They all need Jesus is what they need. That's what they really need. They need to seek help on their knees in prayer. That's what they need. Because this is insane. And I really don't think that anything other than that is gonna make a difference. Anyway, folks, that is it for today's briefing. We're not here to just fill airtime. We are here to equip Christians to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and carry the banner of faith, freedom, and hope into the next generation. And if any of what we said here today matters to you, don't just watch, share it. Bring another man into this fight. If you want to wear what you stand for, like this Tree of Liberty shirt that I'm wearing, or any of the other great designs that we have over there, head over to missionreadymen.com and click Shop 7 Armors and check out all the designs we have over there about bold faith, true grit, and unapologetic patriotism. And remember, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.